Alright, shalom, shalom. I'm gonna start by giving infinite honors and praises to Yahweh, by Hashem, Yahushai, by Hashem, Arakakwadash. Double honors to the Apostle Great Millstone, who rule well and teach well, and are worthy of the double honors. Peace and blessing to you, Akim, pushing out this truth across the four corners during these last sects of time. Alright, just gonna go into a quick hit, going into the tender mercies of the wicked are cruel. The tender mercies of the wicked are cruel. And as you see here, I have an article pulled up on the Newsbreak app. It's entitled, Federal Court Says California Ban on Private ICE Detention Facilities is Unconstitutional. Now, when something is rendered constitutional or unconstitutional, it's given that stance, it's given that judgment under the mind of Esau Edom. All right, who is the devil that the Bible speaks of. So when you see something that's constitutional or unconstitutional, just think of it as this. It was deemed that by the laws of the land of Esau Edom, all right, who is the wicked, pertaining to Job 9:24, whom the hands the earth was given into. So let's get into this article. It says, federal court says California ban on private ICE detention facilities is unconstitutional. It says a California law aimed at closely privately run, stop right there. Now we know in this society, all right, knowing the devices and not being ignorant of them, we know that Esau Edom systems, his prison systems, all right, his legal systems, they're ran privately, meaning they're ran by ultimately the elites, Rothschilds, the DuPonts, the Gettys, all right, Bilderbergs, on down to the least of them, all right, but it's also owned privately under the same agendas, okay? So this system, which is spoken of as the three unclean frogs, all right, the two horns that spake as the lamb, this system, okay, it's set against you so-called Native Americans, Latinos, and Negroes. So Esau, the earth was given into his hands. He could throw out little crumbs, but the crumbs that he throws out, they're cruel still. They're still grievous. They still destroy you, okay? It says a California law banning private prisons and immigrant detention facilities in a state violates the U.S. Constitution when applied to facilities operated on behalf of U.S. Immigrant and Customs Enforcement, a federal appellate court ruled Monday. Let's get this one real quick. All right. Scriptures tell you, all right, this is Psalms 94. Let's see where I'm going to start at. I'll start at verse 20. It says, Psalms 94 and 20. Shall the throne of iniquity have fellowship with thee, which frameth mischief by a law? So you can't get around the scriptures. It's historically spoken that when we're speaking of the Constitution of the United States, they call those that particularly set out to spear the Constitution, they call them the framers of the Constitution. So the Lord put it in here in Psalms 94 and 20, which frameth mischief by law. So the Lord created that framer of the Constitution, so to speak, okay? So the Lord created this law of the land ultimately. So it's governed by the nation that the Lord chose, which is the base of men. So we ultimately have to see the lesson that the Lord is speaking to us, okay? Never to trust this guy. Don't worship this guy. Don't worship this society. Don't get caught up in the wine. Be sober, watch, give praises to Yahweh by Hashem Yahushai. All right? It says, which framing mischief by law. And you see, as it says again, state officials said they were deeply, here we are again back in the article, state officials said they were deeply disappointed in the decision. You see? Because ultimately, in this society, you have actors, okay? You have two wings on the same bird flying to the same destination. Speaking of the Democrats and the Republicans. So you have a society that takes one position on certain issues, and they'll take another position on certain issues. You have pro this, anti this, but in another situation, they might be on the opposite side. They might be against it or favor it. So the Lord said this ultimately. All right. This is Mark. I'm going to start in Matthew. It's Matthew 12 and 26. I'm going to start at 25. And Yahushua knew their thoughts and said unto them, every kingdom divided against itself. And that kingdom ultimately was ancient Rome. All right. And it's ultimately America. Okay. Which is a carbon copy, a replica spiritually of ancient Rome. Especially with its policies, the law. Okay. The Senate House. All right. As you're reading the book of Maccabees. Okay. They were wounded with that sword, but that wound was healed. But ultimately, that serpent grew. You see? And that serpent has gone out to deceive the entire earth. But ultimately, all right, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, chiefly Yahushai, all right, pertaining to Isaiah the 63rd chapter, he's going to plead with these other nations, man, starting with Esau, Edom. It says, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. And if Satan cast out Satan, he is divided against himself. How shall then his kingdom stand? You see? So how shall this kingdom stand when you have an opposing side and you have a for side? Okay, you have, just like it's going to be when it comes down to the decision of this charagma, this digital imprint. You're going to have some that are in favor of it, some that are against it, even when it comes down to the politics of this society. So it's going to be totally made desolate because a house divided cannot stand. That house has to be on one accord. That house is the elect, all right? Starting when Yahushua. And our house is going to be raised up. Right now, during all this turmoil, it says, the 11-judge panel of the U.S. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals found that the 2019 law in question, Assembly Bill 32, specifically violated the Constitution's Supremacy Clause. You see, so they're going at the Constitution. The Supremacy Clause, which goes into basically federal laws can't get into states' business, which is a house divided again. You see? Even down to that, see, the Lord is really making a mockery out of Babylon, man. But you have to stay spiritual to see these things. You can see the Lord is just slapping this place in the face. Just holding it up like if you have an opponent and you see they're clearly been beaten and you just like, you're toying with them, man. So the Lord is toying with this place via famine, pestilence, great death, and violence. All right, so let's see where we at. It says the case began when the federal government and one of its contractors, GEO Group, each sued the state over the law and requested its implementation be halted through an injunction. You see? So they sued the state, man. That shows you, hey, man, this is a house divided, man. And it's going to be like that. It's going to be state versus state. It's going to be federal governments versus the states. It's going to be Louisiana versus Texas, Texas versus Arkansas, Arkansas versus Alabama. And they're going to have a whole total division, man. All right. It's the book of 2nd Esdras, chapter 15. I'm going to start at 15. For the sword and their destruction drawing nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another. You see? There's going to be one people, Democrats versus Republicans, Proud Boys versus the BLM, state versus state. This gang versus that gang it's going to be total derision, total division. All right? It says, and swords in their hands, for there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. And it says, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. right? You see? And that's what's going to happen to these government municipals, state municipals that are rendering these decisions. The people are tired of it, man. They're not going to regard a ruling anymore. They're not going to regard a judgment, a decree from Esau anymore, man, because you so unrighteous decrees. So it says the case began. Oh, okay. It says the appellate court Monday, reading down, the appellate court Monday undid the lower court decision denying the injunction and sent the case back to be reconsidered. You see, they undid the decision, sent it back. They confirmed it, sent it forward. It's just nothing but a wicked chessboard, man, a wicked checkerboard, man, of America. And we see that clearly when it comes to their justice system, because that is a major stronghold that they have on the planet Earth. The legal system, the presidency, the democracy, the feminism, that wine, man. Okay, it says, under the supremacy clause, Eugene wrote, California cannot exert this level of control. In a dissent joined by two other judges on the panel, Chief Judge Mary H. Merguard, also an Obama appointee, let's point this out. She's an Obama appointee, disagreed, arguing AB 32 was valid because it did not directly regulate or discriminate against the federal government. And you see? So it's total division, man. Total division. Now let's read this letter in when we get to this precept. It says, immigrant advocates submitted written arguments in the case in which they accused GEO Group and other private prison operators in the state of allowing poor conditions and substandard medical care for detainees. The companies have denied the allegations. So you see, that's why ultimately it says they've been having poor conditions and poor quality of just dealing with these folks, man. So we know, pertaining to Proverbs 12 and 10, it says, a righteous man regardeth the life of his beast, but the tender mercies of the wicked are cruel. You see, the tender mercies of the wicked are cruel. Although they crouch low and come with policy, come with craftiness, even their so-called best decisions or granted decisions are cruel, man. They're vile. So nothing can come out of them that is good. Who can bring a clean thing out of an unclean thing? Right? So it says, just backing that up, I'm reading one more time. It says, immigrant advocates submitted written arguments in the case in which they accused GEO Group and other private prison operators in the state of allowing poor conditions and substandard medical care for detainees. The companies have denied the allegations. So it says the tender mercies of the wicked are cruel. So ultimately, they're trying to say that this is unconstitutional, but at the same time present poor living conditions, poor medical conditions. Okay, so it's a double tongue, man. So ultimately, Yahweh Bashim Yahushua is going to exonerate us and render us guiltless in the society. Not any court system, all right? Not any Supreme Court, not any chief court of the land. Only the judge of the entire universe, Yahweh Bashim Yahushua. Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahushua, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahushua. Call Allah Yahweh Bashim Yahushua, Bashim Arakakodash. Double honors to the Apostle Great Millstone, who rule well and teach one. I word there that double honors. Peace and blessing to you, Akim, pushing out this truth across the four corners during these last seconds of time. Kwam Yashala, Shalom.